Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door NetAdmin. Today we are going to continue with our window cleaning series. If you've missed the previous episodes, the first one we talked about how to remove some of Microsoft's built-in apps out of Windows and get rid of those by deprovisioning them. Last week, we talked about inserting additional settings into the registry to disable some of Microsoft's cloud-pushed content so that it doesn't download all of these sponsored apps into your Windows installation without your permission. What are we doing today? Well, in all honesty, the first two episodes were probably enough to form the basis for creating a cleaned up Windows image for home use. But I'm a network admin. I do this for work. In a business context, there's a few more things you can do. So I'm going to cover some more of those additional things before we do eventually, and I promise we will do this eventually, before we eventually get to walking everything through start to finish and putting into practice everything that has been covered so far. We are going to get there. We're just going to continue with a few more of the business tips and tricks as well, which honestly I would also use in a home context, but that's me. I'm a network admin. I would do that. You may not need to. So today we're going to talk about audit mode. What is audit mode? Well, like I said, we've covered deprovisioning some of the apps. We've covered inserting some additional registry settings. That may not always be enough in a business context to get you all the way to where you want to go. Maybe you want to install additional programs that aren't tidily packaged into an AppX format that you can just add. So maybe you need to install something a little more heavyweight like Office. Maybe you need to install Acrobat. Maybe there's some line of business application that you need for specialist accounting or business intelligence or something else. So how do you do that? Well, you could do that by just installing Windows on every desktop and then doing all the installs manually. That'd be a pain. we try to avoid pain. So what you can do instead is if you put it into your installation image, then every new computer you create with that image will already have the app installed out of the box. You can also install your Windows updates so it has all of your current updates out of the box, or at least most of them. So how do you do this? The key here is audit mode. In audit mode, you are just logged into the computer, you can make a whole bunch of changes, and then you can create your image off of that. And the counterpart to audit mode is UBI mode. UBI, or OOBE, is the out-of-box experience. It's the experience Microsoft wants you to have when you turn on a computer for the first time and go through all the setup and here, put your accounts in, do all this other stuff. We can customize the installation. We can customize UBI mode. We can actually put it into audit mode instead. And there's a few fun little things to note about this. Number one, starting with, I'm pretty sure it was Windows 7, might have been Vista, but I'm pretty sure it was 7. The built-in administrator account is disabled on most client operating systems. You still have an administrator account on the servers, but in Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows 11, the built-in administrator account, even though it exists, it is disabled. In audit mode, it automatically logs you in to the administrator account, but it's still disabled, which means that you have this fun little thing of if you are in a computer in audit mode and the screen locks for whatever reason, you got called away and you came back 20 minutes later, the screen has locked. You can't actually log back in again because administrator is still a disabled account, even though that's what you're using to do your work. at which point you just have to reboot the computer and give up whatever you had because there's no way to get back in there. Regardless, once it's in audit mode, it will continue booting into audit mode for as long as you need it to. And every time it boots in audit mode, there's a little box that comes up. It's an application called SysPrep. SysPrep is something that Microsoft came out with long ago. Long time ago. It might have been XP. It might have even been before Windows XP. And I don't know how much before it was. SysPrep basically takes the machine that you have and it generalizes it. It uninstalls any particular devices because it's expecting that this is going to go on new hardware. Generally speaking, it'll keep the drivers you've installed if you've installed them as OEM inbox drivers, and most driver packages that I've experienced from Lenovo or Dell will do that, and I would assume other manufacturers would probably do that as well. But it'll keep the drivers, but it'll uninstall the devices so that, hey, I've got a new network card on the next boot, I've got new video hardware, I've got different monitors, I've got all the bits and pieces. It will redetect next time it boots up. Part of SysPrep will also continue by regenerating the computer's unique security identifier. Before SysPrep came out, there was a tool called new SID, which would do much the same thing, and people would use that before cloning the machine that they had into an image, usually using Norton Ghost or something similar to that. But nowadays we have SysPrep to do that tool for us, and then we've got a Windows imaging file that we use instead of Norton Ghost. Yeah, that's most of what SysPrep does. And then it exits audit mode, and the next time that computer restarts, it will be in OOBE, as if it's starting up brand new for the very first time. This is when Microsoft wants it to be in front of the end user. But there are ways to customize this. There are ways to customize a lot of this. Generally speaking, there's actually 7 phases to Windows setup. One of them is Windows PE. This is just the boot environment that we're going to be installing Windows from. There's driver servicing, I believe. I don't mess around with that. There's actually quite a few that I don't mess around with. The ones I do mess around with are Windows PE, Specialize. Specialize is when the machine is coming from a clean, generalized state and specializing into an installed image. There's the reverse of that, Generalize, which takes the specific image that you have created in audit mode and then moves it back to a generalized image for later installation. And then there's UBI System. UBI System controls the actual end user experience as you sit down in front of the machine. So all of these things can be customized. And we do this using a tool called Windows System Image Manager. I'm going to show you how to get Windows System Image Manager. I'm going to show you what it could look like when you're running Windows System Image Manager and some of the options. There's a lot of options available to you. There's going to be a lot of options in my example here, but we're going to try and walk through the most important ones, certainly, and figure out how we can use this, because there's actually going to be, spoiler, 2 of these answer files, which are also called unattend files, or unattend.xml, because that's usually what the file name is. There's an Autounattend. Autounattend is special. If that's on a USB drive and it's plugged in when you start setup, setup actually won't ask you for information. It'll try and pull the answers from Autounattend. Sometimes that can be dangerous. My Autounattend automatically erases the hard drive without asking anybody and just installs Windows. So treat it with some caution. And then there's a second unattend.xml, which I then use after I've finished customizing everything in audit mode. and that tells it the settings that I want it to be using during UBI. So we're going to take a look at those. Follow me over into my office and I'll show you how it works. All right, and here we are on my development desktop yet again. So first thing to show you is how to get these tools, because that'll be useful. If you go to Google or your search engine of choice and just type in Windows ADK, that is the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. It's a big thing, but you don't have to install the whole thing. You can go to the download link, download the current Windows ADK. Because I work a lot with Windows PE, I would also download the Windows PE add-on, but that's not required for what we're doing today. But you might find it useful anyway, regardless. Once you get the Windows ADK, you're going to get a couple of setup files. When you launch the ADK setup, currently it's asking me if I want to change it because I've already got it installed. But when you go through it, what you're really looking for is this deployment tools category. You can see there's a lot of other things that you can install in this kit. But the deployment tools is what we're looking for. Specifically, we're looking for the Windows System Image Manager, because that's how we're going to put this XML file together, and that's how the magic works. So I'm going to cancel this because I've already got it installed. Cool. And then you pop over into your Windows menu. It's under Windows Kits. It's under the kits because it's the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. Fine. But Windows System Image Manager, boom, there it is. All right. Now, you can see that I misremembered my passes slightly. It's not driver servicing, it's offline servicing. But these are the 7 phases that are available to use that I talked about before. Windows PE, offline servicing, again, I don't do anything with that. Generalize, specialize, audit system, I don't use that. Audit user, I don't use that either. UBI system, there you go. Part of what you'll see here, when you first load it up, it'll ask you to select a Windows image, similar to selecting a distribution share here, although I'm not using that. Selecting a Windows image, when you select your Windows image, and here I have selected our custom WIM that we have already worked on in previous weeks, and it'll ask to create a catalog file. You can let it do the catalog file. I already did that in this case because that takes a solid 5 to 10 minutes. So we're skipping that for the sake of brevity. But under that, you'll have a whole pile of components available. And like I said, there's a lot of components. Note that most of these will start with AMD 64. That indicates that it is for 64-bit versions of Windows. You'll also have WoW 64, which is Windows on Windows 64. It's specifically for running, it used to be x86. There isn't an x86 anymore, but that's what it is. And I'm wondering, yeah, these are just AMD 64 and WoW 64. There is no ARM 64, which is something you might see if you were configuring a version of Windows for an ARM processor, regardless. I'm actually going to open up the Autounattend.xml file that I had previously created. You'll see that I only have components in Windows PE, Specialize, and UBI system. This is how I'm going to install this customized version of Windows to audit mode. So I don't need to worry about generalizing it. It's already generalized. I just need to worry about setting up my Windows environment to actually do the installation. Specializing, my Technician PC is the technical term for it used in Microsoft's documentation. And then UBI system. Actually, I take that back. Technician PC is my PC, the one where these tools are loaded. Image master, whatever you're going to call it. Regardless, components in Windows PE. I have Windows International Core. That's just doing the input locale, system locale, the language, etc. This is essentially the first screen that pops up when you load Windows Setup that says, what language are you using, what time, what currency and time, and etc. Do this and you can skip that screen altogether. And then you have Windows Setup. Anything that I've actually set is in bold, so these are available settings that are not being used. But what I've got here is disk configuration. I'm just going to select disk 0. It's going to wipe the disk flat out, period. And then I'm going to create partitions and modify partitions. Partitions created, there's going to be an EFI boot partition. There's going to be a Microsoft reserved partition because it's a requirement to have that. I don't get a choice. And then there's going to be a primary partition. Depending on how familiar you are with the on-disk layout for Windows, you'll note that I do not have a recovery partition here. The recovery partition I'm not bothering with during audit mode. During the final installation of Windows, yes, I want a recovery partition, but not during audit mode. It's extraneous. I don't need it. Then modify partitions, blah, 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 excuse me. Modify partitions is where you format this. You need to format your EFI boot partition, which is partition 1. Again, we're doing partition 1. It's going to be FAT32, fine. And then partition 3, your primary partition, is going to be formatted with NTFS. Pretty simple. Image install, OS image. This is, you're going to select which image you're going to install from. There's a few different ways that you can select the exact image you want. I'm just selecting it by the name of the image. Windows 11 Pro, Windows 11 Pro, we're done. Easy. And then install to partition 3. That's where I want to put it, because partition 1 is the boot partition, and partition 2 is the Microsoft reserved partition that I can't do anything with myself. User data. You're going to get a full name and an organization. Cool. I've just put in temporary values here, but you could use that with whatever values are appropriate for your environment. Accept EULA. This is the, hey, click to agree the license. Agree to the licensing. We're already saying that we're accepting that out of the box because we're customizing this installation and we don't want to be bothered with additional screens. Product key. Why am I showing you this product key? Can't everybody use this? Yes, they can. And it really doesn't matter because I'm just going to show you something interesting here. If we search Windows 11 GVLK, that is the generic volume license key right there. And these cannot activate a system on their own, but it can be used if you're running a KMS server, which is a specialized licensing server on a network. Are we running a KMS server? No, we're not. But a funny thing about this is, even though you've specified the name of the image here in install from, Windows 10 and Windows 11 are finicky about this. They won't actually install that version unless you give them a licensing key. Otherwise, it'll prompt for a license key every single time. So in this case, I'm feeding it one of these generic volume license keys just to indicate, yes, I want Windows 11 Pro, take the generic key and get out of my face, because then I'm going to customize the image. Then I'm going to make an image of it, and that image will be licensed with whatever key is appropriate. It might be KMS. I might use an OEM license key as well. It might be retail licensed. It doesn't matter. For this audit image, I just want it to give me Windows 11 Pro and shut up. So that's why we have that generic license key there. Specialize. Again, we have Microsoft Windows International Core, not the WinPE version, the regular version. This time I'm going to specify, hey, I want to use Canadian English for the UI and the user locale because, hey, I'm Canadian. That's what I'm going to do. Windows shell setup. This has a couple of settings like computer name. I'm just going to give this a generic name, and the time zone. Great. Put it in Pacific Standard Time. That's where I am. There's a lot of other things that you can set here. OEM name, product key, registered organization, registered owner. I don't need any of that in audit mode. It's extraneous. So, UBI system, Windows deployment. Okay. Reseal. This is what tells it we're going to boot into audit mode. Simple as that. And when you actually open up your Autounattend, this is what it produces when you save the answer file. It just saves it as XML. You can actually come into this file and modify it outside of Windows System Image Manager if you need to. But Windows System Image Manager is the thing that you want to use to set it up the first time, because then it'll include all the things like processor architecture, public key token, language neutral, version, non-X by X. SXS is side-by-side, non-side-by-side, non-SXS. XMLNS, all this etc. stuff. It'll put all that in for you and you don't have to worry about it yourself. But you can clearly see that you've got your settings. This is your Windows PE pass. It has all the components and all the items that we set up. The specialized pass, the UBI system pass. Cool. That's the end of that. I'm going to close that answer file, and then we're going to open the second one. There it is. The second instance of this file will again only have specialize and UBI system. There's some interesting reasons for this. Actually, turns out I don't use generalize because what I need is under specialize, and I forgot that until right about now. On my second pass, after I have customized my version of Windows, my Windows image, I've installed whatever applications I need, I've made whatever additional settings changes I need. In specialize, I'm going to have international core as before, deployment and shell setup. In deployment, I'm doing a run synchronous command, and what I'm doing is I'm adding a registry value. This particular value, I will open it in the XML so that we can actually see it properly. Reg add HKLM software Microsoft Windows current version UBI. The value name is bypass NRO, and the data is 1. There's two ways that you could have done this. But first of all, though, bypass NRO is the setting that you need in order for it to accept local accounts, local machine accounts. If you don't have bypass NRO, it requires a Microsoft account, which means that the computer must be online in order for you to successfully configure it. If you put in bypass NRO, you can do a regular offline account. It's local to the machine. It doesn't have to be synchronized anywhere. It doesn't have to be attached to a Microsoft account. It just is, the same way that it always was. You can put this entry into the registry in the same way that we loaded other settings into the registry last week. I choose not to, because I want to have my custom version of Windows, but maybe I have a customer who wants to put this in and have it attached with a Microsoft account. Maybe they are doing something that requires an Azure join, and so you need to have an online account. Okay, that's something that I'm not going to hard code into my image then, but I can put it into my answer file, and when it's in the answer file, it'll remove the requirement. So that's a good thing. International core is the same settings we saw before. Shell setup, I'm going to give it a different name. I'm going to put it in the same time zone. This is an important thing. Copy profile. Copy profile true. What does this do? What this means is on the second time it runs, and it'll be in UBI mode this time, it's going to take everything that was done in the administrator profile, and it will copy that to the default user profile on the machine. This means that anything you customized in the administrator profile, including, oh, let's say I went into Edge and I said, I don't want all this news stuff on there. I don't want a background. I don't want the weather on here. I don't want Copilot. I don't want Microsoft rewards. I don't want you to remember passwords and addresses and all this other stuff. If I go in audit mode and customize all of that, and it's saved in the administrator profile, then when I use sysprep and then run it with this unattend file, when it boots back up in ubi mode, it will copy this profile from the administrator to the default user profile, and every new account on this machine will open Edge without all the news stories, without weather, without Copilot, without Microsoft rewards or Microsoft Wallet. Everything will be customized exactly as I set it up for everybody who uses this machine in future. That's the magic. Other things in Ubi system, deployment, okay? Same thing, reseal, Ubi mode this time instead of audit. Enhanced storage, TCG security activation disabled 1. This is along with secure startup filter driver, prevent device encryption true. These are settings that I have set in my business image to prevent Windows from automatically encrypting the hard drive. And the reason that I have that is because I do want the hard drive encrypted, but I have other non-default settings that I want to administratively apply. And if it automatically encrypts the hard drive first, then I have to decrypt it in order to be able to change some of those settings to what I want to have in future. So enhanced storage, activation disabled 1, prevent device encryption true is just to make sure that I can later apply the correct settings for my customer environments to re-enable disk encryption the way that I want. International core, again, same thing as before, it's just language settings. Shell setup, this one's fun as well. Configure chat auto install, false. Whatever Microsoft chat is, I don't want it. Easy. Auto login. It's going to auto log in the username Nextdoor netadmin once. And the reason for that, and I'll have a password here. This password looks all complicated because I already entered it once in plain text and then saved it. When it saves it, it's encrypted, but not really encrypted. Don't take this as a secure way of dealing with it. You can go to any website you want. I use Google. How do I had a setting for this. There we go. Okay. This is the website that I was looking for. If I go back here to my unattend.xml and I copy this file, or excuse me, I copy this value for the password. If I type that in there and decode it, this doesn't look particularly useful, but if you read in between all the black marks, you can see here, super secret, exclamation mark. And then Windows System Image Manager adds password on the end of the actual password. Password is actually not a part of what I typed in. I typed in super secret, exclamation mark, and that was it. So don't treat this value as encrypted and secure. Anybody who knows how to do so can get the actual value out. And that's not great for us. So, first logon commands, synchronous command. I'm going to launch a script called kicker because it kicks off everything else. This is how I would go through and do further setup necessary after the machine has re-specialized. This can be things like last-minute configuration, installation of remote access tools that you don't want to put into the master image because then it's going to be cloned a bunch of times and it'll usually mess things up. Other things that it can do is I have a script that will check for an OEM license key actually burned into the hardware, because a lot of these come with OEM licenses from Dell or Lenovo, and I can retrieve that and apply the license key properly for each machine. Cool. Ubi. This stuff controls the actual Ubi setup screen. Again, hide the licensing agreement. I'm administratively agreeing to it from the start. Hide the registration screen. Yeah, I don't need to do that. Hide online account screens. Yeah, I don't need that either. Hide wireless setup. Yeah, again, I don't need that either. Protect your PC. This is a really stupidly named setting. Protect your PC is... How do I put this? Protect your PC is the setting that Microsoft has decided to call automatically install whatever we want. Protect your PC. If you have it at values 1 or 2, your computer will automatically download updates and other items without your intervention, without giving you a choice. Protect your PC, the value 3 is what gives you some choice in the matter. So that's why I have that there. And then user accounts. This is where you get to create your local accounts. I'm going to add a display name, Nextdoor NetAdmin. I'm going to be an administrator, and the actual username is going to be the same thing, but it's going to be in all lowercase. And then I have the same super secret password here, which is again encoded after you save the file. And that's basically it. This basically allows me to feed Windows this unattend file, and it will go through, it will add the setting to allow it to use local accounts. It will create a local account as I told it to. It'll skip all of these registration and licensing and setup pages that I don't need. It will avoid encrypting the hard drive so that I can apply that myself later on. And then it will automatically log in once, just once, so that it can automatically run my kickoff script to finish off any additional installation steps required. This allows us to automate the entire deployment of the Windows image after you've customized it in audit mode. Am I going to show you how you can customize this in audit mode? I might next week. I might do that just in terms of launching a virtual machine so that you can see what sysprep looks like and you can see a little bit about how we would do that. But I may not. I don't know. I probably will, though, because I like to show you all the bits and pieces of the process. So, all right, that is more than enough of that for now. So let's head back over and I'll wrap this up. And there you have it. Windows System Image Manager. Done and dusted. We've gone through the whole thing. We've looked at the various passes that you can add components to and which ones I find more useful and which ones I just don't have a use for right now. We've talked about some of the data in there, what it's used for, why it's needed, how secure it is or isn't. We've talked a bit about Autounattend, which you can use to install from the image and get yourself into audit mode. We've talked about the regular unattend, which is what I use to take the image from the customization part in audit mode and put it back into Ubi mode, ready for imaging. So, where does that leave us? Well, next week, we're going to try and go through the whole process, start to finish. I don't know how long a video that's going to be. So I might need to break it into 2 parts. I don't know. We're going to find out. So yeah, we're going to go through the whole thing from start to finish, including starting with an image that's downloaded directly from Microsoft, pulling out all the packages that we don't want, adding any registry settings that we do want hard-coded into the image. Then we're going to take the Autounattend, we're going to boot into audit mode. We're going to do some customizations, and then we're going to seal the image back up so that we have our golden master. And then we're basically done. There's technically a few steps after that pertaining to actually deploying that image and making use of it, but that will cover creating the image. And I think that's what everybody's most eager for. If there's other things that you want to see, feel free to let me know as usual down in the comments. And other than that, hopefully this has been useful and enjoyable for you. Thank you very much for watching. I am your next door NetAdmin, and we'll see you next time.